For decades, Iran and Israel have engaged in a shadow war, a conflict fought in the shadows, away from the public eye. This clandestine struggle has manifested in various forms, including sophisticated cyber attacks, targeting critical infrastructure and sensitive data. It has also involved assassinations, often attributed to covert operations aimed at eliminating key figures and disrupting strategic initiatives. And perhaps most visibly, it has played out through proxy battles, with both nations supporting and arming different factions across the Middle East to advance their interests. Now, that long-simmering shadow war has exploded into open conflict, a dangerous escalation that threatens to destabilize the entire region. We're seeing direct missile and drone strikes crossing borders, a clear indication that the rules of engagement have fundamentally changed. This isn't just a regional feud confined to the borders of Iran and Israel. It has far-reaching implications. It threatens global stability, potentially triggering a wider conflict with devastating consequences. Energy supplies, particularly those flowing through the crucial Strait of Hormuz, are now at risk of disruption, and this escalating conflict could easily draw in world powers, further complicating an already volatile situation. The Middle East's energy routes, especially the Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for global oil transport, are now in a precarious position. Any disruption to this critical waterway could send oil prices soaring, impacting economies worldwide. Civilians on all sides are caught in the crossfire, innocent people bearing the brunt of this escalating violence. They are facing a growing humanitarian disaster, with displacement, shortages, and immense suffering becoming increasingly widespread. To understand today's crisis and the potential paths forward, we must look at the history and motivations driving both Tehran and Tel Aviv, examining the complex factors that have fueled this conflict for so long. This is a rivalry rooted in ideology, deeply held beliefs and principles that shape each nation's worldview and objectives. It's also driven by security fears, each side perceiving the other as an existential threat to its survival and regional dominance. And it's perpetuated by a relentless cycle of retaliation, a tit-for-tat exchange of attacks that only serves to deepen the animosity and mistrust. The world is watching with bated breath as the situation teeters on the brink of all-out war, hoping diplomacy can stop the march to war and that a peaceful resolution can be found before it's too late. Before 1979, Iran and Israel enjoyed a period of relative cooperation. They were quiet partners, engaging in trade and even some degree of intelligence sharing. This unlikely alliance was largely facilitated by their mutual alignment with the U.S., which saw both nations as key strategic allies in the region during the Cold War. American influence played a significant role in fostering this relationship. However, the landscape of the Middle East was irrevocably altered when the Islamic Revolution changed everything, ushering in a new era of animosity and conflict. The revolution transformed Iran into a theocracy fundamentally hostile to Israel's very existence, viewing it as an illegitimate entity occupying Palestinian land. This ideological shift became the cornerstone of Iranian foreign policy. To project its power and challenge Israel, Iran strategically built a network of militant allies throughout the region, most notably Hezbollah and Hamas, among others, providing them with extensive training, funding, and crucially, arming them to exert pressure on Israel and advance its regional agenda without direct military confrontation. Consequently, Israel perceives itself as increasingly surrounded by a ring of Iranian-backed forces, posing a multi-front threat to its security. This is especially true given Hezbollah's massive and ever-growing arsenal of rockets and missiles positioned along its northern border with Lebanon. Furthermore, Iran's persistent entrenchment in Syria, ostensibly to support the Assad regime, has triggered hundreds of preemptive Israeli airstrikes aimed at disrupting the establishment of new military infrastructure and blocking the transfer of advanced weaponry. This ongoing proxy war has fueled decades of intense violence, including devastating wars in Lebanon, repeated conflicts in Gaza, and countless smaller-scale skirmishes and confrontations along various borders. In this complex and volatile environment, each side firmly believes it is acting in self-defense, protecting itself against what it perceives as existential threats. These deeply entrenched hostilities and mutual distrust have created a tinderbox situation, setting the stage for the direct clashes we are witnessing today. The seemingly endless cycle of attack and retaliation has become increasingly dangerous, with the potential for escalation far greater than ever before. Israel's greatest fear is a nuclear-armed Iran, a regime that openly calls for its destruction. This drives Israel's aggressive efforts to sabotage Iran's nuclear program, from cyber attacks to targeted assassinations. Iran insists its nuclear ambitions are peaceful, but years of secret activity have bred deep distrust. The 2015 nuclear deal offered hope, but U.S. withdrawal and renewed sanctions pushed Iran closer to weapons-grade enrichment. Israel sees Iran's nuclear progress as a red line, contemplating direct military action to stop it. The risk of miscalculation is rising, with both sides preparing for the worst. The nuclear question remains the conflict's most dangerous flashpoint. The shadow war has become a direct exchange of fire. High-profile assassinations and attacks on diplomatic sites have shattered old rules. Iran's unprecedented missile barrage on Israel marked a turning point, showing its willingness to strike openly. Israel's retaliatory strike inside Iran sent a clear message: nowhere is off-limits. Each move escalates the risk, with civilians in Israel, Iran, and neighboring countries paying the price. The region teeters on the edge as every action demands a reaction. Ordinary people face fear, economic hardship, and the threat of wider war. The human cost grows with every strike. The spiral of escalation threatens to engulf the entire Middle East. This escalating conflict has the potential to draw in major global powers and trigger a cascade of worldwide crises, impacting international stability and security. The United Nations is scrambling to find a resolution. The U.S. firmly backs Israel, reaffirming its long-standing alliance. But Washington also urgently wants to avoid another protracted and devastating Middle East war, understanding the wider implications. The U.S. is walking a delicate diplomatic tightrope, attempting to balance its commitments with the need for regional stability. Russia and China, meanwhile, have their own strategic stakes in the region, carefully observing the unfolding events. These stakes include energy resources, expanding regional influence, and solidifying existing alliances. The Strait of Hormuz remains the world's most critical oil choke point, a vital artery for global energy supplies. Any escalation of the conflict there could spark a significant global economic shock, sending ripples through international markets. Even a limited war in the region would inevitably send already high oil prices soaring and threaten to trigger a recession that extends far beyond the immediate region, impacting economies worldwide. Diplomacy is currently on life support, with peace talks stalled and trust eroded, but the international community still fervently hopes for de-escalation and a return to the negotiating table. The future remains deeply uncertain, with the potential for further escalation looming large. The choice between war and peace hangs precariously in the balance, a decision that will shape the region's destiny. The world holds its breath, anxiously awaiting the next development, desperately hoping that reason and restraint will ultimately prevail over further retaliation and violence.